Got a really fun off-season episode of The Frieze for you today. First, we will go over some players that the Yankees should target this winter as they try and overhaul the roster. Next, I'll talk about why the Yankees should tweak their minor league system right now to avoid roster problems in the future. And finally, we handed out the belt all season long, and today we have professional wrestler and die-hard Yankees fan QT Marshall on the show to talk about Yankees management and the certain killer instinct that the Yankees seem to be missing. Stick around, I'm Derek of NYY Recaps. This is The Frieze. Before we talk about how to fix this team, first thing we got to do is talk about what's actually wrong with this team. The offense was down all year, and besides Aaron Judge and Giancarlo Stanton, really nobody had a great offensive year. There's still way too many strikeouts on the roster. You could argue that they made it a lot worse by adding Joey Gallo. There's not enough speed or defense. Also, once again, there were some injuries that dogged the Yankees. Luke Voit, your home run champion, he was injured on and off all season. DJ LeMahieu may have been playing hurt for most of the season as well. He's having surgery on a sports hernia this offseason. Aaron Hicks, Clint Frazier, and Miguel Andujar didn't factor in much at all. Gleyber Torres underperformed, but a late season move to second base may have helped him out a little bit. Gary Sanchez had a Gary Sanchez type of season. Low 200 batting average, a little bit of power, although certainly less than we've seen in previous seasons from him. And again, not a great defender behind the plate. And now, facing the offseason about a month earlier than they'd like to, the Yankees have to reconsider their roster construction. In this first part of a two-part series, with part 2 coming probably next week, later this week, I'll explore ways in which I would try to reconstruct the team based on what I saw this season and what could realistically be available out there on the market. In part 1, I'm going to focus my efforts on 3 main areas: first base, shortstop, and starting pitching. In episode 2, I'll tackle the catching position and the outfield situation, part of which will be made more complex by some of the moves I'm suggesting in part 1. Spoiler alert, I would trade Joey Gallo. Now, it's rare that good young players get traded for baseball reasons. It's usually money reasons or contract status reasons, but the Yankees have done it before. Does anyone remember Jesus Montero, the Yankees' #1 catching prospect at the time, for Michael Pineda, one of the Mariners' top young pitchers? That was a baseball trade. The Mariners needed some offense, the Yankees needed some pitching, so they found a match and they made a deal work. Now, the trade didn't necessarily work out for either side. I'd say the Yankees won that deal because they at least got some value out of Michael Pineda. Jesus Montero ended up struggling both offensively and defensively, gaining a bunch of weight, and then throwing an ice cream sandwich at another human being. So that didn't work out great for him. But I think the Yankees should make an attempt at a baseball trade for Matt Olson of the Oakland Athletics. And I know that A's fans are not going to like this. They're going to say there's no way we're going to trade Matt Olson. But I think there is room to make a baseball trade. So what incentive do the Athletics have to move him? Well, not much. He's young, he's cheap, he's under team control, he's really good. Also, the Athletics were playoff contenders, but their bullpen is getting older. They might lose Starling Marte. They're probably not going to re-sign him, so they could use another outfielder. They could use some prospects. Every team loves pitching prospects. The Yankees have some pretty good pitching prospects. They have some good shortstop prospects. Now, it isn't my job to negotiate trades, and I'll admit that I'm not always great at this. I tend to undervalue what teams would ask for in terms of prospects, and I tend to overvalue the Yankees' prospects. But why not offer Joey Gallo as part of a return package? He hit more home runs than Matt Olson this year. He'd probably do a very nice job in Oakland, where they have a very spacious outfield. They're a Moneyball team. They see the value in Joey Gallo, same value that the Yankees saw. Now, before A's fans jump down my throat, I'm just speculating. And the Yankees would definitely, absolutely have to kick in something other than Joey Gallo. Prospects, probably a pitcher or two. But the A's have already proven that they could take Yankees prospects and turn them into good ball players. I'm looking at you, James Caprillion. Did a really nice job this year. In my opinion, you have to overpay a little bit to get somebody like Matt Olson, but you have to do it. Hitting between Aaron Judge and Giancarlo Stanton, he would get pitches to hit, and most likely he would hit a lot of them into the seats at Yankee Stadium. He also makes contact, he's a good defender, so we can dream. Let me know in the comments what you think would be a fair offer for Matt Olson. Though it wouldn't surprise me if the A's told the Yankees to take a long walk off of a short pier. We also need to consider how DJ LeMahieu and Luke Voit fit into the entire equation. Luke Voit, as I've mentioned before, appears to be a man on his way out. He struggles defensively, he struggles to stay on the field. Those are two areas in which the Yankees are trying to improve. So I think that Luke Voit will ultimately find his way to a National League team and become one of the first National League DHs next season after the DH becomes permanent. As for DJ, he's a bit more of a conundrum. He was originally signed to be a super utility player, somebody who could fill in 4 to 5 days per week at second base, third base, or first base, and provide additional contact hitting and solid defense. He obviously overperformed those expectations in his first 2 seasons, so the temptation could be there to start DJ at first base if the Yankees decide they want to spend their money elsewhere. I know that we're trying to get more left-handed, but if DJ returns to form next season, he hits both righties and lefties very well. He's also a good defender. It'll be interesting to see if the Yankees go out and get somebody like a Matt Olson, or if they just re-sign Anthony Rizzo, or if they decide to hand the keys to first base over to DJ LeMahieu. I think Luke Voit is gone no matter what, but let me know what you think the Yankees should do in the comments. I'm inclined to think they're probably just going to re-sign Anthony Rizzo. I don't think there's going to be a humongous market for him, but the Yankees may have to compete with Boston to sign him. All right, let's talk about shortstop. You've got some young guys on their way, and we'll talk about the shortstop prospect jambalaya a little bit later in this episode, but the young guys might be at least a year or two away. That's if they pan out. That's not a guarantee. If you're serious about winning next season, you need a shortstop, and it just so happens there's a lot of good shortstops available this year. I mean, sure, you could go with a stopgap approach. Andrew Velasquez, he played pretty well at times this year. Solid. Tyler Wade, he's never gotten an opportunity to start at the big leagues. You could start him at shortstop. But let's be serious for a moment. Neither one of those guys is going to put up a 5-WAR season. There's simply no chance of that happening. They might be solid. You might get 2 wins above replacement out of either one of them. But Marcus Semien posted a 7.1 WAR, playing mostly second base and 21 games at shortstop. He's a good defensive player. The man has speed. He has power. He makes a fair amount of contact. He hit 266 this year. He hits well in Yankee Stadium. And he can play defense. He wants to be the primary shortstop, but he's blocked in Toronto. And shortstop for the Yankees for a season is still a nice draw. He played 162 games this season. The man answers the bell, which is something that the Yankees desperately need. He wants to be out there. Now, you might be asking yourself, why invest in a shortstop when you do have these prospects coming up? A few reasons. Those prospects are just that, prospects. They still have to prove themselves at the upper level of the minor leagues, and that might take a couple of years. Also, if you want to contend for a World Series next year, you've got to get a lot better, and shortstop is an area where you can get better. Marcus Semien checks a lot of the boxes of things you need. You need more offense. You need more athleticism. You need more speed. You need more guys who stay on the field. Marcus Semien is a nice fit. Now, let's say you sign Semien with the understanding that he's going to move over to third base in a year or two when the kids are ready to take over. Which kid? We don't know yet. Semien only costs you money. You don't have to give up any prospects to get him. Just write a bigger check than the Blue Jays or whoever else might want to sign him. Typically, if the Yankees want a free agent, they're able to outbid any other team if they're willing to go over the luxury tax, which in recent years they've been hesitant to do. The question is, will they this season? One thing to consider, though, is that Semien may not want to leave the Blue Jays. He had a really good year in that lineup, and let's face it, the Blue Jays are a team that's obviously on the rise, whereas the Yankees are a team that may need a couple of years to retool. That being said, he does want to play shortstop. And if the Yankees are aggressive early this winter, they could lure free agents that see they're making an effort to win. Final point on Semien. He's a force multiplier acquisition. Not only do you make your team substantially better, but you make one of your division rivals substantially worse. It's a no-brainer in my opinion. If he's willing to come here, make him the shortstop for a year or two, and then move him off to third base or second base, depending what happens with Gio Urshela or with Gleyber Torres, who may not pan out. I think he'll be better as a second baseman, but I think that 38 home run season might end up being the outlier, and I don't know if he's good enough defensively to put up with 270 and about 10 home runs a season. Another option is Corey Seager. He isn't as good defensively as Semien, in my opinion, but he does hit left-handed and is more of a contact-oriented player. He could also move to third base or second base in a couple of years, depending on what happens with the prospects or Gleyber. Also, he's had more of an injury history than Marcus Semien, so you're taking a little bit of a risk there. I do think he's a nice fit, and he might be a little bit cheaper than Semien, but I think I would still go with Semien. There's also the option that you could consider Carlos Correa, but he's going to want an enormous contract. He's probably the best option offensively and defensively. He's going to be just 27 years old, I think, and he's great on defense. He hits for power, he hits for average, but he comes with the stain of the 2017 Astros, and I know that some fans will just flat out never accept him. Many of you included, I'm sure. Personally, I would try for Semien, but have Seager as my fallback option. I don't think I want anything to do with Carlos Correa. I think I'd rather give one of the kids a shot to develop early than sign Carlos Correa to a $200+ million contract. I just don't see that happening. As for the pitching staff, a lot of you may be tempted to run it back with the rotation we have. Luis Severino should be able to step back in and be a top end of the rotation guy if he can stay healthy. Jordan Montgomery was solid. Jameson Taillon looked good for a while. Luis Gil was pretty impressive when he was around the strike zone. But personally, I want another horse in the stable. There's three guys that I think the Yankees might target. Carlos Rodon of the White Sox, Robbie Ray of the Blue Jays, and Kevin Gausman of the Giants. If I were writing the checks, the guy I would personally go after is Carlos Rodon of the White Sox. He suffered from a little bit of a dead arm towards the end of the season, but there was nothing structurally wrong with him as far as we know. He threw only 42 innings in 2019 and 2020. Then he made the jump to 132 innings in 2021, and he was going through a dead arm period. He was just tired. He's thrown 669 innings over the last 7 years. That's not a ton, mostly because he wasn't very good. He keeps the ball in the ballpark, though. He doesn't allow many home runs, and he's coming off of a breakout season. He did suffer from that shoulder fatigue that we mentioned coming down the stretch, but again, that was because of the big jump in innings, and it might make him a little bit cheaper than somebody like Robbie Ray. It might scare some other teams off of big contracts. You might not have to commit as many years. Rodon has incredible stuff. 97, 98 with the fastball, good breaking ball. And I would trust his health and development to Eric Cressey and Matt Blake in a nanosecond. I don't want to sign Robbie Ray just because I don't want to listen to him grunt like Monica Seles for the next 5 years. He's good, though. He's going to win the Cy Young, and he's going to get a big contract from somebody. The grunting, though, tells me that he's a max effort guy, and I don't like giving out big contracts to max effort guys who are going to be on the wrong side of 30. As for Kevin Gausman, he's got tremendous stuff. And he's had a really good year with San Francisco, who has also had a really good season. So I think they're going to reward him with a contract. I think he's going back to San Fran. I don't know if you guys have noticed this, but a lot of the Yankees who are actually performing well offensively in the minor leagues are also shortstops. I can't speak to everyone's defense because I haven't seen them play in person, but everything I've heard is that they're all pretty good defenders. If the Yankees are serious about turning one of them into a long-term shortstop, then they need to take at least a couple of these guys and get them regular work at other positions. If you want them to be good defenders by the time they reach the majors, you need to get them thousands of reps in the minor leagues. That's how it works. Peraza and Cabrera are both at AAA, so one of them should play shortstop every day, and one of them should play either second base or third base every day, so that in the event someone from the big league club goes down with an injury, you have somebody ready to step in, and they're not playing out of position right away. Anthony Volpe might be the best prospect out of any of them, but he's still a couple of years away. Leave him at shortstop for one more season and see how some of the older guys do. If they fall off, you have him ready to take the next step. If they succeed, you have time to move him over to third base or second base, wherever you think he's a good fit. Doing this video has made me realize just how poorly the Yankees organization is constructed. If you sign somebody like Semien that I think you need for next season, it blocks your younger guys. And since they all play the same position, it blocks all of them. It's stupid. Trey Sweeney is the most recent draft pick, but he's got a great bat. Move him over to first base and teach him to play the outfield. Now. Now is the time. That's what the minor leagues are for. All right, so before I get to my interview with QT Marshall, here's where my roster rebuild stands before we get to episode 2. Like I said, later on this week, maybe early next week. We'll fill in the remaining blanks next week, and just a reminder, this is what I would do, not necessarily a prediction to what the Yankees would do. Catcher is to be determined. First base, you got Matt Olson. Second base, I'm going to stick with Gleyber Torres for one more season. I think moving back to second base will help his defense, which will in turn help his offense. Marcus Semien will be my shortstop next week with the intent to move him over to third base when one of the young studs is ready to step in and perform. At third base, I've got Gio Urshela, but if he gets injured, you got to have somebody in the minors ready to come up, maybe Oswaldo Cabrera. In right field, obviously, Aaron Judge. Giancarlo Stanton is the DH. But left field and center field, I'm leaving as to be determined. Remember, I traded Joey Gallo, and I'm not too sure about Aaron Hicks. So we'll get to all that next week. My bench is Wade, Velasquez, Higashioka, and Allen at this point. That could change. Rotation looking pretty strong. Garrett Cole, Carlos Rodon, Luis Severino, Jameson Taillon, and Jordan Montgomery, the best number 5 pitcher in the league. That pushes Domingo Germán to the bullpen, where I think he would be excellent and would be less likely to wear down. And then Luis Gil, waiting in the wings in the minor leagues. He is the real deal. If somebody goes down, as somebody always does, he could step in and do a nice job. So on to the interview. This is QT Marshall. I hear you're a diehard Yankees fan.
Since I was born. I was born into being a Yankee fan. I mean, like I have a stuffed animal that I made in home ec class when I was in 7th grade. It's like a gorilla or something, and it has a Yankees jacket on. It's upstairs right now. I should have brought it down, but I'll send it to you maybe you can see. But it's an old school 1980s Yankees jacket that the gorilla's wearing. That was my brother's, then passed on to me. And, you know, maybe when I have a kid, I'll make them wear it just for at least a photo because it's old. It's vintage.
You're around wrestlers. You're around people that were athletes at one time. I bet a lot of these wrestlers were, you know, football players and things like that. And there's a certain killer instinct that certain athletes have, right? Sure. Winning athletes. I never got that impression of Aaron Boone as a player as the guy with the killer instinct. He had that big home run, but he was not your killer instinct guy. And I don't see that out of him as a manager. Do you think he's got what it takes to be the leader of men, you know, on a championship level?
I think we see Aaron Boone for what he allows us to see, right? And in 2021 and probably the past 10 years, everybody is the participation kind of, oh, well, at least we tried, at least. But that's BS, right? Like if you listen to Derek Jeter interviews, he'll tell you like winning is what the only thing that matters. And I think I see a little bit of that in Judge. Definitely see it in Stanton, and he just, because he never speaks, right? Because I'm sure he would say the exact same thing. And Boone is very much the positivity coach and the one that's not going to ruffle any feathers in the office. Which, listen, if that's the way the Yankees decide that they're going to run their team from this point moving forward, then they just need to know that they're not going to win. It is what it is. They have to show frustration and show anger and all of these things, and he doesn't really do that. He's just sitting there, just kind of minding his business, waiting for someone else to make that call for him of what to do, or look on that paper and say like, oh, is now the time to take the pitcher out? Like, why don't you just ask the pitcher? You know what I mean? Like, I really like Girardi. Of course, you know, I'm a Joe Torre kind of guy as well, but like, yeah, I'm not a Boone guy. He hit one home run. That was very, very special. I'm not going to take that away from him. Like, dreaming as a child, that was the home run you'd want to hit, but you know what I mean? Like that
I hear you.
Be the coach.
So you're old enough to remember George Steinbrenner.
Sure.
I just don't see any of him in Hal. What about you?
No, not at all. I don't even see how. George, he was in the limelight a little bit, and he would make decisions and make these sometimes not so popular choices, or if he spoke, stuff like that. I don't know anything about Hal. I rarely hear of him, really. You know what I mean? And I think whether that's because he doesn't want to be in the spotlight or not, like, at least I would hear the players complaining about him if he really had that instinct as well. I just think, he's a kid that his dad owned the Yankees and now he owns them and whatever.
What do you think about Brian Cashman?
So, I mean, if it's anything like the movie Moneyball and that's really how their job is done and stuff like that, I think he's done a pretty good job over the years. I think he's made some bad choices here and there and letting people go that shouldn't have, like Didi Gregorius. How do you let that guy go? I think he's done some good things. I think he's done a couple choices that, like, I remember in 2001, right? When Tino Martinez left and they got Giambi, I remember making a bet with my friend that the Yankees wouldn't win the World Series for the next 5 years. It's crazy that I would make that bet because I'm a giant Yankee fan. But,
right.
And in 2003, when Boone hit the home run, I was like, oh man, I'm going to lose this bet, but that's great because it's the Yankees. And they didn't win because they started spending the money. And I guess I was getting older at that moment, so I kind of understood what was going on. But I never really remembered the Yankees being that team. And I guess going back and looking at history, of course, they still always were that team that would hire sign the big players and stuff. But in 96, 97, 98, they would get good players for decent amount of money, not amazing players for crazy amount of money and expect them to win. The whole team won. Like Scott Brocious would hit a game-winning homer. This person. The Yankees now, it's like Stanton, Judge, Sanchez doesn't even run the ball out. Gleyber Torres doesn't. I mean, come on, guys.
That's one thing that just drives me up a wall. Growing up in the 90s and watching those 90s teams, even when they were playing poorly, they hustled. And that's something that they would always make note of on the broadcast. It's like, hey, Yanks are down 8-2 in the 7th inning, but Derek Jeter's legging out a ground ball to shortstop, and that's just something you don't see very often anymore. And I feel like, bringing Aaron Boone in was kind of catering towards that mentality, which is, it's okay. Let's don't get hurt. Let's keep it, let's give everybody their scheduled rest day. No. Whereas, let's not dive for balls because you might get hurt. Like, I like
Dorn style.
Yeah. I like guys that play hard no matter what the score is all season long.
The Yankees, I look at them as like the ultimate good guy team, right? And of course, everyone else hates them, but there's no facial hair with the exception of a mustache. You're clean cut. You don't argue with the umpires. Like, I remember when Derek Jeter would argue, if he ever did, he put his head down. He didn't make a big scene of it. Right. Yeah. Like, yeah. I mean, DiMaggio kicking the dirt is still a huge thing. So, remember I told you my dog would be fine. She's, jealous now. But yeah, like, I don't see those things anymore. You know what I mean? Like, there's just no passion. I don't know, I mean, they just keep doing this when they hit a ball. Like, what the heck is that, man? Just hit the ball and play like it's every day.
Probably my least favorite moment of the whole season was a game where the Yankees were losing big in the 9th inning. Luke Voit hits a home run and gets to the dugout and starts like doing the whole, chugging water thing where he's, showboating in the dugout. It's like you're down 6 runs with 2 outs in the 9th inning. Let's understand that the team has not accomplished their goal tonight, so.
Right. Yeah. I mean, that's the thing too. Like when we wrestle after the match is over and you come in the back, I tell all my students, don't wear it on your face, whether you had the greatest match in the world or the worst match. Just treat it like it's every day. And that's what Derek Jeter used to do. And that's why Derek Jeter is going to go down as one of the greatest baseball players of all time. Forget his stats. You know what I mean? And you can see Judge is trying to follow in those footsteps, but you can see almost like he's probably frustrated with his team. And they need a leader that's going to sit there. And if Boone's not going to do it, have a player do it. We have someone that's not in our office in the wrestling company, and he's in charge of the talent, where he'll pull the talent aside, like, hey guys, blah, 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 this, that, and the other. And we don't get involved as an office perspective because sometimes you just need that. You need the other players to rile each other up and let them know, like, hey guys, this is my livelihood here.
Any advice to young people?
Man, work hard. Don't let anyone tell you can't do something. At the same time, be be realistic about what you can do, and know that you are going to get rejected and shot down and this, that, and the other. And the world isn't just, as like Rocky would say, sunshine and rainbows. And you're not going to always get the participation trophy. But think about what you want to do and then just do it. I think, I did a seminar this weekend, 19 hours total. I was scheduled for 4 hours each day. That's how much I enjoy teaching and really getting the message across about success. And, I'm not the most successful in our industry, but I do all right. And it took me 17 years to get there. So, but I have to let people understand that there's a lot of ups and downs, and you just got to stick with it. And, just know that no one's going to be standing waiting for you to just hand you something. And in 2021, I think a lot of people think that that's the way things are going to happen. And then when it happens the other way, they don't know what to do with their lives. So, and then I'm just going to keep moving forward.
Tell me about the Nightmare Academy. You mentioned teaching. This is something that you just opened up in Georgia.
Yeah. So in 2017, I uplifted my wife and I from New Jersey. We moved down to Georgia, and I sunk every dollar into this wrestling school idea that I had. Because I didn't know if I was still going to be able to wrestle, because I had broken my neck and just a lot of negativity in my life and this, that, and the other. So we decided to do that. And little by little, I worked hard. I worked overnights at Home Depot. I worked during the day at Longhorn for lunchtime just to make enough cash to continue the school. And then when All Elite Wrestling kind of started up, obviously the exposure helps in this. And then I partnered with a very famous wrestler by the name of Cody Rhodes. And now it's the #1 school in the country.
If you came up to bat in Yankee Stadium, what would be your walk-up song?
I read that before, and I was trying to think. I have a really cool theme song in wrestling right now that we created about 8 months ago. It's called Breaking Free, because I was part of a group, and then I turned on the group and all of this stuff. And the lyrics really mean something to me, and it's kind of hard hitting. So that might be it. I did get to go to bat at Yankee Stadium once when I was like 13.
Oh, really?
Yeah, my friend's dad worked for ShopRite in New Jersey, and I guess he had like the hookup. We got to play on the field before the game and stuff. I didn't hit the ball that far at the time, but yeah, I want to go back. That's part of one of the things I want to do as a half famous celebrity wrestler guy. I want to be able to go back to Yankee Stadium. I want to throw out a first pitch. I definitely want to do batting practice, because I believe I can hit one out over the porch. I think I can.
Well, if you get invited, invite me along. I'd love to catch your first pitch. That would be fantastic.
You got it. That's the deal.